Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Today's going to be a lot different from other days since normally I do Geometry Dash videos, but I am also a roller coaster enthusiast, so I thought I would be counting down my opinion on the roller coasters of Cedar Point from worst to best. I went to Cedar Point on the 8th and 9th of August, and I had a great time, like possibly the best time of my life. So yeah, I thought I would just say my thoughts on that and maybe get a bit of a roller coaster audience on the channel, since I would be happy to make a couple more roller coaster videos unless this thing does like terrible, in which case I probably won't make another. But you know what? It's worth a shot. I'm gonna do it. First, I'm just gonna start off with the through rides that I didn't go on, ranked from how much I think I would like them from worst to best. Number 3 is Wilderness Run. It's like 8 feet tall. Why would I go on that? Number 2 is Corkscrew. I went on a 2 inversion corkscrew model as my first looper, and I still remember getting beat up. 3 inversions would just be worse. I mean, it is, like an arrow looper from 1974. Like, honestly, it's just not worth my time. It could give me such a bad headache that it just ruins the trip, and, I'm not going to do that to myself. And then number 1 is Cedar Creek Mine Ride. I think this thing probably has great theming in the area near the water. It's probably cool, but like it's an arrow mine train. I went on one of the worst ones, the Lanaga mine train at Six Flags Over Georgia when I was there. I was pretty little, so I didn't go on like the massive stuff, but I did go on some of the smaller rides. Not like like way small, but like up to Daredevil Dive, Batman, that type of thing. Anyway, I'm getting off track. Yeah, I didn't like that, so maybe I'm just against arrow mine trains now. And this does seem like one of the better ones, but still from 1969, over 50 years old. So I don't know. It's just not worth it. So then we get into the top 13, the main ranking. If you guys like the video, make sure to like and subscribe. Let's get right into it. So at number 13, we have Woodstock Express, the Vekoma family coaster. If you're wondering why I went on this, I actually didn't go on it at Cedar Point, but there was an exact clone at Walt Disney World. And it was okay. I mean, I was like 8 when I went on it, so it was fine. It was pretty fun, just pretty relaxing, nice little family coaster. I don't really have anything bad to say about it. It's just a pretty basic ride, nice for families. But this is Cedar Point, so it is gonna place at the bottom. There's not really much for me to say about it. It is a family coaster. Number 12 is Blue Streak. This thing is so rough. Like in between each hill, you just get jackhammered. I'm lucky I didn't end up with serious thigh bruises between this and some other rides that have very tight lap bars. This ride still has great airtime. It is from 1964. It's the oldest operating coaster in the park, so it definitely shows its age. I know some people think this thing is butter smooth, but maybe it's just because I sat in the back row. I don't know. But if you're not in the back row for a wooden coaster, then like, what are you doing? Honestly, the back row is usually rougher than the front row. So maybe that's it, but I don't know. I mean, the people that I'm getting that opinion of it being really smooth from probably also sat in the back row. So I don't know. I think this ride is good. It's just way too rough. It could. I mean, I don't think they would retrack it, since that would be way too that would cost way too much for just a small ride like Blue Streak. It would be a better option just to take it out. But I mean, it's not a bad ride by any means. It just its days are numbered, definitely, at Cedar Point. So number 11 is Iron Dragon, which I think is less intense than Blue Streak by a fair amount. But the suspended coaster, what's it called, gimmick of it, is pretty cool. You know how you're under the track and swinging from side to side. But it is not as intense as I thought it would be. Maybe because Iron Dragon is definitely the smallest of the 5 that are still operating. But it is still, like, a good ride. Just a fun family coaster. Unlike stuff like Woodstock Express, which is pretty basic, this is actually, like, it does have some forces, especially in the second half. When you come off that lift hill, then you do go into a turn, like a few turns that do have some good forces, some good laterals. So yeah, no, this ride is not forceless by any means. It's a good ride. I think that if you want a little cool down in between, like going on the big stuff, if you're going from like Millennium Force and Valraven over to the back of the park for Maverick and Steel Vengeance, then this is a great ride to just calm you down, just give you a little bit of break if you're that type of person. Be warned, if you have fast lane, it doesn't work on this. I got fast lane plus for the trip. I did wait like 20 minutes for this thing, which doesn't sound like much, but for a ride that is this small, it's not very worth it. So just get one ride on this. Don't really go on it again. It's a cool experience, just not something you want to do more than once, pretty much. Plus, it does have 2 lift hills, which can be a bit annoying, but it's no big deal. Good ride, definitely. Number 10 is Wild Mouse. So this is another one without the fast lane. And I got more frustrated about this than Iron Dragon, since I waited, I think, somewhere between 30 and 40 minutes for this. And the car that I got in like barely spun, so that was pretty unfortunate. But it is still a pretty good ride. Same thing with Iron Dragon. The turns do pull some good forces, but it's still not like an amazing ride or anything. You know, it is Cedar Point. You know, Family Coaster isn't going to rank top 5 or anything. But no, it's a good ride. I definitely enjoyed it. I was still frustrated about how long I waited in line for just such a small coaster. I think they should put Fast Lane on this thing. Not Fast Lane Plus, but just normal Fast Lane. Since this thing is drawing pretty big lines, and the cars only seat 4 each. So it is a pretty slow moving line. If the line was that long on like a large capacity ride, like Millennium Forest, for example, which we'll get into later in the video, then it would be moving super fast, you know, like that would be a 10-minute line, but the cars are very small, so the line moves quite slowly. I think Wild Mouse is, you know, I do enjoy the spinning mice. God, mouses, what am I doing? Anyway, yeah, I went on a Pandemonium clone at Six Flags New England, and that was super fun. I'd say this is definitely not as good as that, but I mean, it's not a bad ride by any means, you know, I did enjoy it. So, yeah, Wild Mouse, another good one to cool down, but again, just go on it once because the line is always ridiculous since it is opening year this year. Number 9 is Rougarou. I know that a lot of people put this at the bottom of like the major thrill coasters. This is, yeah, also the start of the major thrill coasters here. And I get why now. I was like, it's a floorless coaster. Like, I like the Batman at Six Flags New England. Like, how bad can this be? But, I mean, it wasn't bad. It was just forceless, like completely forceless. I expected to get maybe some airtime going down the drop, but I just felt nothing. Compared to I know I'm going to be comparing this to Batman at Six Flags New England a lot, which at least seems like a higher end floorless because it was very fun despite it being rough. Rougarou is just, you feel nothing. Even going through the loop, and loops usually are like one of the more forceful inversions, but I just felt nothing. Like, I don't know how they did it, dude. Hats off to Rougarou. Like, making things that should be forceful just completely forceless. Literally the only moments where I felt any force were the turns before the mid-course brake run. And then the mid-course brake run, dude, it kills the ride. It's so terrible. Like, you could at least have some force going through those final bits, but you just meander. Like, it's just very boring. Yeah, no, it was just not that good. Definitely just a one ride. Unlike the last couple I've mentioned, this does have fast lane, and the rest on the list do. It's just like a lower end floorless because you don't really feel any forces. The corkscrew is very rough as well. I never really had any roughness issues, but apart from the corkscrew, which was not good at all. A lot of headbanging on that one. I don't know, I just stuck my head out for the rest of the ride, do that. Yeah, you shouldn't get a terrible ride on this thing, just not a good one. Number 8 is Raptor. I know it's going to be controversial, and the next one is controversial too, but yeah, I thought that this was a very, not rough ride. I mean, there was some headbanging throughout, but it wasn't that bad. This ride is very forceful. I'd say this is the second most forceful ride in the park, if not the most forceful, which actually became a problem. I'd say, you know what, thinking back, this is probably the most forceful because it is painfully forceful. So I'm just going to skip ahead to the downward helix, which, oh my god, I just got like a headache that just kept getting worse as I kept spiraling down that thing. I went on this 3 times, once in the front row, once in the 4th row, and once in the back row. And the rides in the 4th and back row were where I got that increasing headache. It was not fun. The front row was fine. Still intense, you know. You get whipped through those corkscrews and the Cobra roll, but especially the corkscrews. The corkscrews are great. But this ride obviously has like some growing pains of B&M inverts since Cedar Point got this one pretty early compared to some other models that they've gotten. It's not a very well thought out layout. Like, there's a bunch of random straight track, and the downward helix is just like, why? I know it's a very intense element and cool in the front row. Like, that's where it's perfect, but if it's gonna be like that painful in the back row, then why would you do it? Also, the turn into the final brakes is weird. Like, it doesn't hurt that much. You do hit the restraint a bit, but it's not like terrible or anything. Raptor is a ride that I do find to be quite overhyped. While it is very intense, it could be a lot better. And number 7, this is another controversial take that I was talking about before, Magnum XL 200. As people have said in the past, this is janky fun. The thing is, the specific person that I'm thinking of saying that, Airtime Thrills, he put this at number 2 on his list. That's right, number 2. I don't understand that at all. Sure, Magnum is a good ride. You know, it is very rough, but it does have some great airtime. But the problem is, I think the airtime is just like, you know, you can have better airtime. It's not like amazing or anything. People said that this is some of the best airtime they could ever get on a coaster. I sat in the Magic Seat car 1 row 3, and then I sat in car 1 row 2. and then I sat in the back row, did all those 3 times in a row, and I had a pretty similar experience the whole time. In the back row, the airtime was a bit stronger, not like a ton more. I expected better rides on this thing, but still, it's not bad. The first half is actually, I found the airtime to be more enjoyable in the first half. The turnaround is painful, but not like terrible or anything. The thing that I love about the first drop on Magnum is how you feel like you're going down the angle that you're gonna go down the whole time, but then you surprisingly hit another steeper angle, which I think made it the steepest coaster in the world at the time. That's from all the way back in 1989. So yeah, Magnum is definitely showing its age, but it's not a terrible ride by any means. It is a fun experience. It's just like kind of stupid as well. Like those airtime hills at the end, just the fact that they're triangles like that, like basically triangles, it's so weird. Like it's a very weird experience that I can't really put into words too well. But the tunnel placement is also really good. I do like the tunnels. It like adds some extra enjoyment to the ride. The airtime hills I found to be quite painful, but they do shoot you out of your seat a lot. But I couldn't really feel it because I was more focused on my thighs getting absolutely slammed. But yeah, no, Magnum's a good ride. I'd say it's worth like a couple rides. But you know, focus on the better stuff. Don't wait in line. If the line is really long on this thing, then don't wait forever for it. Also, funny story about this: it had been closed because of getting stuck on the lift hill and not being able to move. Like a couple weeks before we went, it had been closed all the way through Tuesday, and Wednesday was our second day at the park. It had opened up like halfway through that day, so I'm very lucky I was even able to get on this in the first place. So number 6, this is probably my most controversial take on here. That or number 4, it is Gemini. That's right, Gemini above Magnum and Raptor. This thing is considered by some to be a family coaster, but I rode this thing in the back row every single time, and oh my god, the airtime is actually ridiculous. Like this is the best airtime I think on any ride I've ever experienced. Like, you are just flung out of your seat. You are gliding on that lap bar for multiple seconds at a time. Like, I have never been on a B&M Hyper, but this is like, I mean, what I can imagine a B&M Hyper being if it had ejector airtime. Which, like, just thinking about that sounds insane, but I went on a smaller version of that. Like, Gemini, the fact that it's able to pack so much into its, like, you know, small height, which was the tallest coaster in the world at the time. Now it's like, you know, small ride. It's only 130 feet tall around there. It still packs a punch. Like every single airtime hill will have you flying out of your seat, except for maybe the last one. But yeah, there are a couple valleys that do have some jackhammering, but like for the most part, it's a very fun ride. Quite smooth, especially considering that it's 11 years older than Magnum. I don't get that. Same manufacturer. Similar track style. No, actually, they're different models. Gemini is a dueling mine train, or as a lot of people call it, dueling mine train on steroids, which is an accurate name for it. And Magnum is just, you know, standard aero track. Gemini is just a fun ride with insane airtime. And the turnarounds, you know, the dueling aspect, they were dueling almost the whole time I was there. And it was great to have that high five moment. And yeah, it's just a fun ride. Now let's get into the top 5. In the 5th place spot is Gatekeeper, the B&M wing coaster, and the only wing coaster I have ever been on. This ride is just a ton of fun. I know a lot of people like to criticize it for being forceless, but it's just fun. Like there is a bit of a B&M rattle, but it's not like that bad. I've, you know, had some worse rattle blue streak, but yeah, no, that's not even that bad blue streak. This does have some, after the drop is where the rattle is the worst, but it's not that bad. My main issue with this is the restraint. So it starts off like, you know, not being too tight, but same spot when you go over that drop, it just pushes all the way down to your hips as it can. Like I literally felt it move 2 inches probably. And then by the time you're staying on that final brake run, you are in a lot of pain. Like the first time I went on that especially, I got stapled by the operator, and then it pushed down even further, and yeah, no, it was super painful. But apart from that, let's just get into the positives. First of all, the first drop in the front row, the first time I went on it, I was in the back row, and that was like, you know, fun, pretty good experience. But then I went in the front row for all, you know, my next 3 rides on that, and wow, that first drop, the way that you're just slowly turning over upside down into that dive is amazing. And the rest of the inversions and hills and stuff are just a ton of fun. You know, it's very floaty. It just has the like grace and like gliding of a family coaster, but it still has some intensity. You know, it's just such a fun ride. Like you're high off the ground for what feels like the whole entire time. And the head choppers and the keyholes, I will admit, they didn't feel as exciting as I thought they would, but they were still a really cool part of the ride. And yeah, it's a long ride. I think it's over a minute long, and it's just fun. Yeah, I really don't know what else to say about it. It's just a fun ride. I really recommend you go on it quite a few times. So number 4 is one that I know a lot of people are gonna be questioning, because people like to put this toward the bottom of thrill coasters because they find that it's too short and all that it does is just be a magnet for the general public. But I found this ride to be amazing. I got a night ride on this, and it was the most rides that I got on a coaster. 8. It's Valraven. This thing is so fun. Like, I know I said that about Gatekeeper, but this thing is next level. You get a great view of the park at the top, and then if you're not going in the front row on Valraven, you're not doing this ride the way that you should be. Like, you get the whole hangover, you get a perfect view of like half the park. And even my dad, who's scared of heights, like, he still loved this. He said that this is his 3rd favorite in the park. It's just so cool. Like, you get some nice hang time on the 0G roll, and the unexpected second drop off the brake run. Like, I thought the brake run was just there to slow you down a lot so it could increase capacity or whatever. But I mean, it does do that, but it also gets you to have a bit of a hangover on that drop because it takes a bit for you to crawl over that. This ride is just full of a bunch of different types of forces. The drop being really fun. There is some jackhammering, like very slight, some B&M rattle after the second drop, but it's nothing too bad. And if the restraints weren't so restrictive like they are on the newer B&M dive coasters, which is a complaint that a lot of people give this thing, then I would be able to get some airtime on those hills. I did feel it a bit, but I just wasn't actually going out of my seat. Like, I did have that bit of a stomach dropping feeling. Very re-rideable because of, that hangover is just, it gets you excited every time. It's really well done. I don't know, it seems like a good dive coaster. I haven't been on, any other dive coaster. I haven't been on Griffin or Shikra or any of the quote-unquote better ones. But I don't know, it's just a very fun ride. If I do go on those quote-unquote better ones, then I am in for a treat. Those are going to be so good. Moving into the top 3, I have seen some people put this at their number 2 or even number 1 spot. I don't get putting it at number 1, but I do kind of see number 2. I did have this at my number 2 for a while, and it's still going back and forth. This is very, very close at the number 2 spot, but I ended up putting it at number 3 because it does have some dual moments. Maverick. Now, yeah, Maverick at number 3. I know I'm like one of 3 people in the world to think that, but Maverick I found to be such a good ride. Like, the intensity of it is almost unmatched. There is the downward helix on Raptor, but that's actually painful. Like, this is the highest intensity you will get in the park with it actually being fun. The dull moments I was talking about were the twisted horseshoe roll, which you may think inversions, those are the dullest parts. Yeah, they are. I didn't really believe it until I went on it. But yeah, they are very forceless, at least compared to the rest of the ride. It's still very good, and the second launch is very powerful. That's only the second launch coaster I've ever been on after Rock and Roller Coaster at Walt Disney World. Yeah, that was way more powerful than Rock and Roller Coaster. It's a very good ride. The Stangle dives I found to be too intense the first time. After that, I did really enjoy them. They kind of caught me off guard at first. I was like, they are pretty snappy, but they can't be like too insane. And then I just got flung into them and very caught off guard the first time I went on it. But then I went on this thing like 4 more times, and I loved them every time. And the snappy turns in the first half of the ride, I'd say, are probably my favorite part. Maybe the second launch tops it, but I don't know. Also, the Beyond Vertical drop, you are just falling out of your seat for that. Like, it felt genuinely dangerous. Like, I've been on a lot of Beyond Vertical drops, 2 Eurofighters, and this is like the craziest one I've ever felt. 'Cause this has, I think, a more loose restraint compared to those. And yeah, no, it's just a really good drop, especially considering the height. And yeah, it's just a speed demon. Like, it flies through every element all the way up to the end. And if this thing still had the heartline roll partway through, which they had to remove because it was too dangerous apparently, like that would be, yeah, no, I mean, I think that would be like insane. That might put it all the way up at number 2. If it didn't like almost kill me, that would be the thing. Be warned, the lines do get very long. Like, if you want to get a single-use fast lane, this or the coaster that I have at number 1 is likely the one that you want to get it for, because the lines move quite slow. This is because of bad capacity for each train. There's only 12 each, but the number 1 spot is because of there being metal detectors that you have to go through, and you having to get a locker for all your loose articles, which is pretty annoying, but it is at number 1 for a reason. It doesn't take away anything from the quality of the ride. Maverick, great experience, especially after the first ride. The first ride wasn't too good, but after that, it was very fun. So number 2, now that you know what, if you know Cedar Point, you know what the last 2 coasters are, and it should be pretty obvious what number 2 is. It is Millennium Force, the world's first giga coaster or roller coaster over 300 feet tall. Now this thing completely blew me away. This was the first coaster I went to. Right when they let us in for early entry, me and my dad ran straight to it. Wow, it was just so good. Like I've always been nervous about roller coasters, but this was the year that I just finally broke through that, and I went straight to Millennium Force. No doubts in my mind, and it was just so worth it. I got on the first train of the day, which I'm going to tell a bit of a story that'll lead back to that. So we got toward the front, which it is less intense. I went in the back row a few times, and the first time I went in the back row, there are these extra bars behind you. I was like, I always have my hands up, but it freaked me out so much that I went back to grab the back bars the first time I did. But then after that, I had my hands up. The first drop, anyway, the first drop, no matter what row you're in, is probably the best element. Yeah, no, definitely the best element that you will find in the park. The first drop, I can't even put it into words. Like, it just never ends. It is insane. You have to experience it yourself to just know how amazing it is. And then after that, nothing even comes close to the first drop, but still really fun. You have, especially if you're in the back row, you have these floater hills that turn into ejector when you go down them. So it's really cool. In the front row, it's just floater airtime, but in the back, you're flying up in your seat, and then you get shot right back down. It's really cool. The speed hill towards the end is also great. It provides some ejector airtime no matter what seat you're in. I've seen some people call that the best element in the ride, which I do not understand. I find the 2 other floater hills to be better. But no, it's still cool. And yeah, just like Magnum, the tunnels are very well placed with the turns. And it's just a great ride. Like, a ton of fun. And it, never loses speed, pretty much. Except for when you're going over those hills, but that's kind of the point. No, it's just a really enjoyable ride. And if you're scared of this thing, it's just the first drop. Like, once you get past that, it's just a very fun ride. Oh, and the other part of the story, we got off Valraven at like 9:59. That was the 8th ride on it. And I wanted to get one more ride on Millennium Force, because we got like a dusk ride, kind of. Like, the sun was still out a bit, but I wanted a full-on night ride. So we got off Valraven at 9:59. The park closes at 10. I sprinted straight to Millennium Force, and it was like a 3-minute sprint away. I got there. It was like 10:02, 10:03. I thought that it was going to be closed for sure. But the person staying there, to let people in, just let me through. And I got on the last train of the night. That was the last of the 2 days in the park. So I got on the first train and the last train of the trip, which was amazing. That was like, I feel like that's something I'm not going to forget for a very long time, if ever. So yeah, that was a great experience. I went in the second to back row for that, and it was awesome. I never went in the front row of Millennium Force because I didn't want to get splattered with bugs. That is something that I've heard people complain about, but yeah, no, it's just such a fun ride. I really love Millennium Force. So, the number 1 roller coaster at Cedar Point, it should be no surprise to you if you've seen anything about this park before. It is none other than Steel Vengeance, what I consider to be the perfect roller coaster. It's the best it could possibly be, in my opinion. And it's 77 seconds of greatness. That's not including the lift hill or anything. It's crazy. It's such a fun ride. Like, I know I've been saying that about everything, but it's just like every element has a purpose. That's what I love about this ride. Some other rides feel like some elements are just there to, get from the element you just did to another. But everything here, like, even if it is just doing that, like, it's fun. Those last airtime hills do kind of feel like that, but they're still extremely well done. Like, they're still interesting with the turn, like, aspect of it. I think when you're coming down and going up one of them, so that's pretty cool. It's very well executed. Alan Schilke is a genius. He's the guy who designed it. Yeah, the first drop, due to it being 90 degrees, it just feels crazy. It's like the falling out of your seat feeling, not almost as much as Maverick, but I'd say more than Millennium Force. You don't really feel like you're falling out of your seat there. It just feels like you're going very steep, and it just keeps getting faster and faster, like the never-ending feeling. But this is more of a falling out of your seat feeling. And different from Maverick, this doesn't have a over-the-shoulder restraint, so it's a lot more crazy than Maverick, in my opinion. Plus, it's another 100 feet taller, so it lasts a lot longer. The first 2, like, big hills after the drop are crazy, like, amazing elements. And you'd expect them to not be as good as the drop, but because of the banking, like, they're just so fun, so crazy to go through them. So after you go through some more elements and some inversions and stuff, you end up at the mid-course brake run. And that's already going through after going through like 30 seconds of the ride at least, which may make you think like, oh, we're almost to the end. Nope, you still have what would be like a great ride already to go through for the whole second half. And honestly, I didn't tell too much of a difference when the trims were or weren't hitting. But the main difference is whether you're sitting in the front row or back row for that. Because in the front, like, you get more of a floating out of your seat type of thing, with it still being injector air time. Like, it's very weird. Especially the sideways air time, like, that is just so genius. It's so, like, such a weird feeling, but so well executed. Like, it's just so cool to have that feeling. I really can't describe it. It's just, all I gotta say is sideways air time. In the back, you get some crazy ejector going through there. And I don't know whether I prefer the back or the front, but it's just such a good ride that I just don't have a preference. It's just so well executed. Like, it's so good. And some rides, when you get to the final brake run, like, you still have a lot of speed going into it, like Millennium Force. But this thing, like, you don't have too much speed. And it's such a long ride that you feel completely satisfied. Like, there's nothing that I could add to this to make it any better. It's just so good. And yeah, Steel Vengeance, my all-time favorite roller coaster, no question. And my favorite roller coaster at Cedar Point. So yeah, it's gonna finish it off for another video. This trip was really fun, except for the day that we flew there. If you can, I would recommend that you take a trip to Cedar Point. It's completely worth it. And see you guys in the next video. Again, if you want to see more roller coaster videos, tell me. Yeah, bye.